Your iPhone.
Welcome to Second and Lap. It's Gramps, your host. 37,743 miles in on my second lap around the world. Happy Wednesday. I just wanted to start off just real quick. A reminder, I did a quick blurb a couple days ago where we posted a new pair of shoes, new pair of kicks, and I think you should be cognizant or aware that your shoes are in need of replacement, every 300 to 400 miles. And if you don't do that, you're risking, joint issues and other bodily sort of pains and things. I know that mine are going bad because my knees start to hurt and my ankles start to hurt. So I can kind of look down and I can see on the bottom of the tread and I can tell. But I've been doing this a long time and I've gone through about 120 pairs of the Brooks running shoes. So sorry, I'm knocking over my bottle. Yes, but I am wearing the new shoes. We are going to talk with Patrick Francisco. Please bring on the guest. Happy Wednesday.
Hey, I'm
I
coming in hot. I have to ask the entry graphic that I see from the green room waiting to come on. When the walking character pauses, what exactly is he doing? Does he have cramps? Is he what's happening there?
he's medicating.
I didn't know. It could have been anything. I just
I don't know
I
why he
just
takes a pause.
observed.
I don't know. I think he takes a pause. He's trying to show restraint. He just doesn't want to go up the hill too quickly. And I
Fair
was going to say,
enough.
I thought you were going to ask about the music. That's Leonard by the Mummy Cats.
No, I like the music too. I just was noticing the guy pausing, and I'm like, "What's he? Is he observing something on the ground? Is he got cramps? What's he got?
So in
Is
the
he looking
spirit,
down at his shoes to see if they're worn out? What's happening?"
he's at the mile. He's at the 300-mile mark, and he's checking his shoes. So that is very, very
That
point.
makes sense.
Yeah, poignant. I appreciate that. As a good friend of mine, I wanted to, and shout out to Jambo for watching us live. I wanted to bring us back to make it sort of a second part to our first conversation around adult friendships, and I was going to kind of summarize and get your buy-in that our first conversation, in a nutshell. Hey, look at me. I'm in a nutshell. Sorry, doing an Austin Powers impression. I thought you'd appreciate that early in the afternoon. Um,
Early.
early, early, another another zinger. Uh, yeah. So I'm trying to think of what I was even going to ask you. That's how much of the good zinger that I gave myself. We talked about friendships and we talked about there being a couple of things. The things being like anything important, it takes effort, it takes intentionality. You want to be intentional, and it takes effort to have adult friendships. It's not just like being in school where you're going to just go hang out with a bunch of humans in your near age group,
Yep.
at a water cooler and talk about stuff. And so there's intention there, and I think that's kind of what we wanted to talk about. And what I wanted to start off with, giving you the floor, is as you go back and think about that last conversation, is there anything that you thought about later that hits you? Is there anything that was like, hey, we didn't really focus in here, and I think we could have spent more time there? Just any sort of like, didn't even give you a chance to think about this before we kicked this off, but
Yeah.
anything you'd kind of go back to?
I mean, I think the thing that I thought about after we spoke that I didn't think that we gave a due amount to, and I think we talked about the intentionality and we talked about the common interest. We talked about a lot of those different things that make that spark happen.
Right.
What comes to mind though is just the I'm going to use the word that I'm not even sure is perfectly aligned with what I'm trying to say, but the serendipity of how the relationship kind of like kicks off in such a way that yes, there has to be intentionality. Yes, there has to be all those other things we talked about. But I went to a high school with 1,000 kids in each grade.
Right.
So, like, I was literally at graduation. Kids were walking across the platform getting their diplomas. And I was like, I've never seen that kid before in my life. Like, kids I went to school with the whole time.
Right.
So, meeting friends that I'm still friends with today in high school, when you're talking about 1,000 kids in just your grade, it's like there seems to be something we didn't touch on that's like, how does that happen? Because you could just as easily have never met that person at all. Like, one of my friends, he's still friends this day. We were working at now a defunct restaurant called Chi-Chi's. It was a Mexican restaurant back in high school. And I remember, one time we were kind of casual friends, whatever. We weren't like close. But one night at Chi-Chi's, I remember, and I can distinctly remember it today. He said, "Hey, Francisco, what's up, man? I reached out to you the other day. I called your house, whatever. You haven't got back to me. Like, what do you think? You're too good for me?" Joking around like that.
Right.
And I immediately felt so bad that person felt that way, like I was trying to avoid them, that I then began to really make an effort towards them. And that then turned into like one of my best friendships from high school. But like that was 100% just based on the serendipity of him making kind of a joking comment in a Chi-Chi's one night, and it changed the entire trajectory of our friendship.
I hear you, and I think I would expand the serendipity to just being in the right place at the right time, just having sort of any one of those things like you're saying, that without it, that spark doesn't happen. You're not friends. It's almost like Back to the Future, and you got a different principle.
We were friends, but maybe on the acquaintance level versus him being in my wedding, me being in his wedding. Like it's like, and I could literally look back at that and say we went from acquaintances to more closer friends based on me being like, oh, this guy actually wants to like spend time with me and I want to reciprocate that. And like he could have just as easily not said anything. And I'm like, what, like, would that same friendship have fostered? Would we just remained acquainted? Like, it's like, I look back at that and it's like such a seemingly meaningless moment in time,
right,
that maybe had a dramatic impact on how things played out.
And I completely just, because of all of the experiences I've had in my life, I believe in the whole butterfly effect. I believe in those sort of small, tiny things that happen here that create this, immaculate change over here or what have you. I would lean in and I would say, knowing you, based on our conversation before, having somebody that makes sort of a, smart aleck, smart ass kind of snarky, somebody that sort of speaks your other languages, sort of it like kicks you into gear and you start to think. And I think you're right. I think you're back to what I said was required. You have to sort of have a desire and put yourself out there. And I think the magic happens when that's reciprocated, meaning he also put himself out there in this place like, hey, Francisco, too good to call me back. That kind of thing where it's like, I don't know if I heard you say it made you feel bad. I think it made you aware. That's kind of the words I would use.
I don't know that it made me feel, that was probably a bad term, made me feel bad, but it made me feel like I don't want to be that guy that's like not like, I've always been, and we both like Gary Vaynerchuk, so you'll love this. I always like being that 51-49 guy. If somebody's willing to come 49% towards me, I'll come 51 to that. Like I'm, somebody wants to be friends, I'll more than put in my half of the equation,
I feel the same way. And I think yeah, back to what I was saying. It's an effort thing. So the serendipity part, I guess, if I hearing you saying what you're saying and us not talking about it before, I think there is magic, there is spark, there is.
Dare we say fate? Dare we say like, you know, divine providence? You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, like there's something at play there that we haven't really dissected, and I'm not sure we are capable of dissecting it, that is more than just randomness.
Agreed. And I don't know how I would label it either. I don't know if we can dissect it. But yes, it's part of who you are, putting yourself out there. My mom's now talking about it with my dad. So I'll transition to my dad has doesn't meet or he doesn't go to places and experience them alone. He goes places, and my mom said he goes to a place and then he seeks out someone that looks like they're as close in age to him as he is. And then he goes over and he just starts talking to him. He makes friends with him and he wants to have a conversation with him. And she's like, I don't need to be friends with everybody. Right. So anyway, everybody's different. My point of that little, I don't even know what that was. That might have been a story. The point of that was that you got to
Okay,
put yourself out there.
but no, real quick sidebar there. Here's what I'm talking about. Your dad, I'm very similar to your dad. I could talk to somebody in the line at a restaurant. It doesn't matter. Like I don't know that I would actually say friends more as much as acquaintances, but go to a football game and by the end of the game, I'm hugging the person next to me. I don't even know them.
Yeah.
The magic though is your dad could do that 1,000 times, but one time it becomes much more than just a passing thing. What constitutes the magic of that one time that goes beyond that temporal interaction and becomes something much more permanent? And again, I don't want to get too deep or act like we're too intellectual here, but that's where I feel like we haven't really said. I mean, because you and I are both outgoing people. I mean, I literally in a given week will interact with hundreds of people, like in a friendly way, like, but those don't all turn into friendships, not by a long shot.
I hear you. And I don't know what that spark is. Like I said, it would be interesting to try to dissect it. I'd have to go back and look at it. But people that we've met or folks, I don't know if it's something, as you said, maybe divine. Maybe it is something part of the ether or the ethos or what have you that brings it and it's that spark. But I think if we're talking about what can we do to make those things possible, like I don't know that we can control that, but I think back in the spirit of controlling what you can control, and what is it? Being aware. I'm trying to remember the prayer. Anyways, being aware what you control versus what you don't control, so you don't drive yourself crazy trying to deal with things that you can't have any effect on whatsoever. And what you have control of is being a kind, outgoing human that puts themselves in a position to have other people, run into them. I don't know if that's standing in the middle of the hallway or whatever, but put yourself in a position to be run into.
And I feel like too that, and I say this now with a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old boy, and some of the advice I've given them is like, I have very rarely found that those really good friendships come from me chasing, for lack of a better term. Like me wanting to be friends with somebody and me trying to, like, I feel like there needs to be effort. Like my buddy at Chi-Chi's saying, hey, Francisco, why haven't you, called me back or whatever? I think there needs to be effort, but I don't think you can, I feel like sometimes people decide they want to be friends with a certain group of people or whatever, and they work really, and it's not there. That spark, whatever that is not there. And they're chasing wanting to be part, which, is probably never going to happen. At least in my experience, it's very difficult. Like, I think relatively early after some, interactions, I think something, and doesn't mean that's forever. Maybe a year goes by and those relationships get rekindled or whatever. But I don't feel like I've ever been successful, or I've ever seen anybody be successful trying to chase after friends. I feel like that's a very bad recipe. Like,
Well, I would say just at I would actually take that all the way to the human level. Like if you're trying to find a spouse or a significant other, that they talk about that being one of the biggest decisions we make, because that's the person you're going to be around for the rest of your life. And if you're looking for certain coworkers or people, I mean, in most cases, you want people to be engaged, show effort, that stuff that you're describing. You want to see that. I mean, that's I guess I want to almost say it's table
but
stakes for
but I
communication.
think that if you're putting in the effort and you're not seeing it reciprocated, I guess my point is, like, at some point realizing that there just isn't, like I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of time, maybe months, maybe years, really putting in the effort and not getting that effort reciprocating, and not realizing that it's like, hey, maybe you should put that effort in somewhere else, because it's just not happening there for whatever reason it may be. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
um, when we moved to California, my wife and I, other than the people that I worked with, and I was coming in as the guy running the business. So it's really hard to make friends with people that are your employees. So the only people I really knew were people that worked for me, if you will.
Right.
Um, you know, and California is not necessarily the Midwest where everybody's like chit chatting with everybody else. And I remember there being a period of time where I, kind of talked to Cammie, my wife, and I said, if we get invited to anything, birthday parties, whatever the case may be, say yes to basically, and we ended up having a small nucleus of really good friends out in California too. But it took us saying, like, we're going to put in that initial effort. But then if I felt like we were putting an effort and it wasn't being reciprocated, I just redirected my energy somewhere else, because, it's just, you've only got so much energy in a given day. And if a relationship is going to drain energy rather than charge you up, sort of doesn't make any sense. I mean, I want to spend time with people that I leave more energized than spend time with people. Now, granted, it doesn't mean if somebody's going through a hardship or a
Yeah.
death, or, those things, of course, don't charge you up. But I'm saying in general, I want to spend time with people that I leave more energized than when I got there.
I agree with you. You want to spend time with people that it's mutual. I guess is the word I was searching for. Like, you're both in it, you're both interested in it, you're both participating in it. As you said, the 51-49
And
equation.
it doesn't mean there's not difficult things where you have to show up as a friend and things like that.
Right.
But for the most part, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this. My really good friends, it's easy. It's not like I'm having to break my back to like try to make the friendship work. I mean, it doesn't mean, one of my good friends, we were really good friends in high school. We ended up, when I was in the Navy, didn't see each other that much. We ended up then rooming in college when I got out of the Navy and went to college. And, certainly there were times when him and I were ready to like wring each other's necks as roommates in college. But, I didn't, that friendship, lasted through all that. And I guess my point is, like, we've talked about putting effort into friendships and things like that. And I think there's a there's a nuance there between putting effort in and chasing. And I don't know exactly how we can, delineate there, but I do think that's an important delineation of like putting effort into a friendship or just, I think the effort has to be reciprocated. It can't be a one way effort, you know?
I would agree with you, and I think in those cases, I would not to put words in your mouth, but I would almost tell you for me, it's it's how I feel in my gut. Like my gut's telling me, hey, this guy's interested, he's busy, it's worth the effort, or hey, this guy's not interested. As you said, he's an acquaintance. He's going to be there to help you if you need to move maybe on a Saturday, but he's not interested in, talking about the game and hanging out. And or there's nothing more there for the energy that you're putting in. So go put your energy, somewhere else. So I do agree with
And I think
that.
that things come up, no question. Things come up, obligations are there, both work and family obligations, things like that. So I wouldn't say if you invite somebody to do something or whatever, and they can't do it, or like after once or twice, you basically call it quits. But I feel like people that want to spend time with you will make time for you.
Yes.
If they're consistently not making time for you, it's because they don't want to make time for you. I mean, it's harsh and sometimes it sucks to accept that reality, but people that want to make time for friends or what will make time. There may be some things that are outside their control, but if it's consistent, like people that want to spend time to each other find ways to spend time with each other.
Water seeks the lowest level. Yes, people will find a way to hang out. They'll find a way to how to talk. They'll find a way when if it's important to them. And that's the back to everything boils down to choices, right? We all have choices, and if you want to have a friendship, then you're going to have to make the choice to put in the effort. Give some, as you said, not all. It's not going to all be roses. There's going to be times where you're going to take it on the chin, and that's part of what comes along with having a friend.
No, I agree. And again, it's, I feel like, and we're on this medium right now doing this interview. So I hate to like be one of these people that's talking bad about technology or whatever, because the technology has definitely allowed a lot of other things to really flourish. But
Right.
It's also allowed people to kind of recede into their own, world, and maybe they have a lot of people they're friends with on Facebook and they interact with, or but that's to me, um I feel like technology sometimes isn't like been the best facilitator of people meeting friends. I mean, even like I have a friend right now that's via a divorce back in the dating game, and just telling me and using what's now modern and everybody's doing it, like dating apps and things like that. And I'm just thinking how foreign that is to me. I mean, like I met my wife in a calculus class in college. Most of the girls I dated prior to that, I met through just some randomness of we were in the same place at the same time at a friend's party, whatever.
At a
And
soda
I'm
fountain.
like, yeah, and you know, it worked out like for our generation and for generations prior to us. That to me now it's like I got to put this whole profile on, and then the app sort of matches profiles, and it's like I'm not sure we've advanced. From talking to friends that are using that sort of thing, I'm not so sure that they're better off than we were with the randomness of it, you know?
Real quickly, Pindar. Yes, I'm just walking and talking actually in my neighborhood right now. So yes, do the podcast, and I'm carrying my phone on a phone stand, and I'm holding it with my hand like it's one of those squeeze things. I hear what you're saying. No, I don't think the apps have made it easier. I haven't talked about it, but I went through a divorce 10, 11, 12 years ago, and I had some experience with the apps. No, the apps, it's, it's so like inhumane, and you feel like a piece of
Yeah.
meat. It's not something that is the serendipity, I'll use that word, of running into somebody in a grocery store or at an event or at church or somewhere else, as opposed to on your
And
phone and you got to swipe
to
right.
bring it back to friendship, I feel like, you know, I often, because my son that's senior in high school plays lacrosse. I often see a lot of kids that would consider themselves friends, and then they're in a group, and every one of them, in a lot of cases, are looking down at their phone or whatever. And then maybe if they see something funny, they show their friend or whatever. But I'm like, it's a different type of interaction than what we had. And I'm like, again, that's where I say, I think technology has been great for society. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like there's been something lost in, like, just I mean, I grew up where if it was Friday night, we didn't have to have like unbelievable plans, especially when I was in like junior high and high school. Friday night plans might be meeting up with my friends at the mall and sit there and do laps around the mall and run into girls and guys we know from school and chit chat and things like that. But there was no plans. There was no, heavy, like, we just went and hung out.
Right.
What happened to just hanging out? It seems like that's like disappeared.
It has. And it's funny. I was going to say, when you started talking about it, I think there's some people that have done some art where they take the phone out of people's hands, and then it seems like everybody's just looking at their hands these days. I've experienced it even in my own house, where I'm sitting on the couch and my family is in the room and they're all on the other love seat or sitting on the other chair, whatever, and everybody's looking at their phone. They're all, they're all involved. So I don't. It's a societal. I'm gonna use a big word. I don't even know if that's a real word, but it feels like it's at the society level, as opposed to a different level, that we are looking at our hand. We are more in focused on that, as opposed to using the skills. So yes, I do. Hey, Patrick, you know this. I've made my living off this technology. Like, I've bought homes
Yeah.
off this technology. I've done this. So I'm not shaming the technology. And at the exact same
No.
time, I don't remember people's phone numbers like I did, the numbers that I grew up, like my phone number in Alaska. I can remember that phone number, but I don't
I
know my
remember
buddy's
the
cell
phone.
phone.
I remember the phone number I had growing up, which, now you're talking about 40 years ago. I would be able to rattle that off faster than I could rattle off my wife's current number.
And that's the
That's the
person you
God's
sleep
honest
with.
truth. That's the God's honest truth.
Oh man. Yes, these things are not making us any better. And I don't know that they're helping with friendships. I mean, I think this is a sidebar, but and we've talked about this because you and I went to VCon together 3 years. There is friendships in those worlds. There are friendships that can be digital. We can use technology to find our people, wherever they happen to be. And not or but, and it's so great to touch their skin and be in their presence and have a
Yeah.
cheeseburger and do all the things that you do when you're in public, like we did with Eric out in California and Cadeau at VCon, and that kind of stuff, where
Yeah.
you're taking it beyond the digital as opposed to just digital. So the alpha is
I
you
think
still want
that
to.
I think the technology is awesome. I didn't mean to like sidebar into a rant on technology. I think it's awesome, but I think you do have to then take it. It's like, okay, you're friends with 386 people on Facebook, but you have no plans this weekend. It's like, Like it's like, like how about like reaching out to some of them? And it doesn't have to be anything that's expensive. You don't have to go out to a dinner. You don't have to do anything. It's like my daughter and I just got back from a trip to London, and we because she's an architecture and urban and city planning major, so she wanted to walk a lot of the city so she could see it instead of like being in the tube or the underground or in a cab. And in 3 days we walked almost 36 miles, which is nothing to you, but
That's great. That's
we
fantastic.
walked almost 36 miles through London, and very little of that was looking at a phone. We spent a lot of that time just talking about things that we were seeing. If we were walking through a park, we were walking through a city street, noticing things, talking about that. And I'm like, I feel like it doesn't have to be like, hey, let's get together for dinner or let's get together for some. It's like, back to my term, somebody commented mall rats, but what happened to just hanging out, just getting together with people you enjoy and just like hanging out? It could cost zero other than the effort to meet up somewhere. And, and I feel like that piece of it isn't, I think technology is great, but I think it's acting in some ways as a substitute for that because, I'm keeping up with people online, seeing what their kids are doing or whatever. But when was the last time we just got together and hung out? No agenda. No, let's just go hang out. You know what I mean?
Yes. Phone junkies. Yes, Chambo, I agree. I guess I would throw it back to you. Let me ask this question, and anybody that wants to comment, Ronnie, what's the modern day mall? Like, I don't know, but maybe one of the 7 malls left that you can even go to. Like, what do you do for that?
In America, that's a really hard question. One of the things my daughter and I talked about, she's 20 now, and one of the things I wanted to do in London is I took her to some of my favorite pubs in London. One of them is like was founded in like 1757. Been in the same side. It's a little hole in the wall pub. But I wanted my daughter to try a proper Guinness, like an actual Guinness, like, that came from a real pub. And when we went in there, I said to her, I'm like, what do you notice? Again, she's in city and urban planning and architecture. I said, what do you notice? And she looked around and we sort of had a really great, fruitful conversation about this. And I'm like, sitting next to us was a couple of girls, probably in their early 20s, sharing, each had a pint talking. Over my back shoulder was 3 guys, probably in their mid 60s. Looked like they've been friends for a long time, chatting. Over in the corner was a family of like a grandmother, a parent, mom and dad, and some kids kind of over in the corner. And that I said to her, I'm like, where in the United States do we have places where multi-generations come like after work hours or whatever? And a lot of it is just hanging out. Like, we were in another pub one day in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. We walked in and there was like 6 guys, probably in their 60s, maybe late 60s, just having a pint and hanging out and talking. And I'm like, where is that? I can't think of anything in America that serves that same role that the corner pub does in London or England. Can you think of something that fills that role?
The closest thing that I would say that I see, and I'm going there with my grandkids and my kids, in the mornings, is Starbucks. That's the only thing that I can kind of almost give sort of that friends, couch there, but even the remodeled Starbucks have gotten rid of, the fireplace kind of seats, and they've made it, more utilitarian and cafeteria wise as opposed to.
I was going to say, I think Starbucks set out many years ago, and the official term for what we're talking about is a third space. You ever heard that term? Like you've got work, you've got home, and you've got a third space. When we were growing up, that third space may have been the mall, may have been the
Yep.
mall.
Yep.
But the third
Or
space
the
is
roller
where
rink.
people,
Roller
yeah,
rink,
or
right?
roller rink or, whatever.
Right.
But there's that idea. But I feel like Starbucks set out to do that. And if you've ever read Howard Schultz's book, he talks about that. But I don't know that I see that the say like,
They've
you know,
changed.
at the hotel we stayed in London, there was a pub literally right next door. It wasn't one of my favorites, so we didn't really go in there. But like every day at 5:30, there was literally the pub was filled and there was 2-3 people deep out on the sidewalks all sharing a pint and talking, because that just is the place that a certain group of people go after work to have a pub and talk about have a pint and talk about the day. I don't think Starbucks hits that note. I think they tried to hit that note, but I think it's nowhere near the same level.
No, and
Is what
they've
I'm talking
changed.
about.
They've changed multiple CEOs, and the business has changed. Just like Tully's and some of the other ones that have all been sort of absorbed up or have been mopped up. They all sort of had that beginning, and then they've got corporatized. They got rid of the wine that they were serving in some, locations and other things because I think they were trying to be that. I wished I wish there was a third space. I mean, back to we're on X and we're streaming, and I'm a V friend as you're a V friend, and I'm a tweak, and I think you've got a couple tweaks, and there are these communities. There are NFT NYC. There's NFC that I went to in Lisbon. There are Marfa here in Texas that we go into in October. These are places where your people that are on the internet that you're dealing with on crypto Twitter get together, and they're rubbing shoulders, and they're doing dunk tanks, and they're in hot dog eating contests, and they're doing all the goofy shit that we do as humans. I guess I'm taking all this together to say we need to come up with a third space. And I don't know if it's
Well, no,
called third
and I didn't
space
even
or
intend. We haven't talked about this at all, so I didn't even talk. We didn't even intend to. I didn't even know we were going to go here, but I do remember the first VCon though, because you're so active in the tweak community. I remember there were people that you were meeting for the first time at that event that knew who you were, knew who they were, and I think that's great. I think that's where digital really expands the horizons. But I think in the effort to chase after that, which I think is very worthwhile and it can be very satisfying, we've lost that community of like just I grew up in an Italian family where the dinner table was, even though it was all your family and maybe a couple friends that tagged along or whatever, that acted as the third. Like it was conversation about the day, this, that, people making fun of each other, giving each other a hard time.
right.
But now families are rarely even ever eating dinner together. Everybody's busy. Everybody's going in a different direction. Me included. And my daughter and I had some good conversations about that in London. And I just said, we were just observing and just saying, it's sad that I feel like, there really isn't anything like that I can point to in the U.S. And again, at one point in time, I would have said me growing up as a teenager, especially pre-driver's license teenager, that third space was the mall. Maybe
Agreed.
younger than that, like grade school, that third space was every Friday night at the roller rink, or like you had mentioned.
Yep.
But there were places outside of set structures, like outside of school or whatever, that we went to just hang out. I mean,
And it was great because it would help us to use social skills, and it helped you with negotiations, and it helps you with, not always getting your way and having to sort of do some of the group stuff. And it was a
and just
growing up
learning,
thing that
like
we've
you said,
lost.
just like when you're at the mall, like you're hanging out with your friends, you wanted to kind of play the fool a little bit because you know how high school kids do, but you couldn't go totally off the hook because you may run into somebody that's friends with your parents that you don't want them telling your parents like that you're being an idiot at the so you
Right.
were learning how to navigate this world. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
Yes. It's these soft skills that we've sort of taken away. And I think back to use another Gary reference, he's like, if you know the location of your 27-year-old kid, you're not doing him any favors. Like people,
yeah,
you need to be able to go out and do things and grow. And I say that I have some of my own kids' locations, and it is something I only look at like twice a year, but it's there. Back to the technology thing, I think what we're missing, and I guess I would challenge as we wrap this up. I want to be conscious of your time. I would love for us to be able to brainstorm and help provide that third space. Something that lets people know that this is a place that people are able to go be together, to
yeah.
congregate, to I even want to use the word
I mean,
loiter, like hang
my
out.
my family sometimes teases my mom because my mom's term for what we're talking about is bumming around. Have you ever heard this term? Bumming
No.
around, which is just like getting together with some friends and just like no, we're not getting together to go and buy a certain thing or whatever. We're just getting together to hang out and,
Right.
let that go where, and again, her term for that is bumming, which is kind of unique. And, sometimes, my family like jokes about, that. But my point is like, that element is, I think, here's the crazy thing. When you went to think about like some of your fondest memories of certain seasons of your life. I mean, and they're seared in there, like some of them. And a lot of times they're, if I think back in my own memory banks, they happened at those third places.
Yes.
Like ducking behind the coach at the roller rink to sneak your first kiss with the girl in third grade.
Yeah.
Um, all those different things that I feel like, we, again, now, and when we went to the mall, maybe one out of every 10 times, if it wasn't the arcade, one out of every 10 times I went to the mall, I might actually buy something. The intention of going to the mall wasn't to actually buy something or to go
Right.
shopping. It was just to go hang out. Now I feel like malls for the ones that still exist, sometimes they're outdoor shopping centers. They're transactional. I'm going for a reason. I need to
Right.
go to this store and I need to buy this. And I'm not then going to spend time hanging out. I'm going for a reason.
Right.
What
They don't make it. They don't make it convenient.
maybe the rare exception of during the holidays,
Okay.
which is interesting because I feel like we talk about getting together with friends and family and enjoying the holidays. And what does that sometimes look like? When I think about in my brain bank, like what comes to mind when I think about that, it's not particular stores or anything like that. It's hanging out.
Yep.
That's what makes the holidays magic. We hang out with people.
Yes. Yeah. We need it, and I think one of the big keys to this is when we do this, the device that I'm making this podcast on gets put into a one of those bags like they make you do at certain concerts, or gets in, put into something where you're
Yep.
locking away so that you're focused with your hand, not you're not looking at your hand. You're focused with your people, and you're loitering and you're talking and you're having a conversation. And I've even taken it to the level of, as I've fantasized about this, do you leave a Polaroid camera out on the table that when you push the button, it comes out and you have to, flap it to get the pictures? Do you
There's
go back
actually
to that?
that's actually like among late teenagers and like college kids. there's actually people, they're interested. My daughter has like things up in her bedroom, like these picture things, like the strings, and you know, clip pictures
Like a
to it.
mobile?
They're Yeah,
What?
they're all from instant cameras. Like,
Okay.
like that they were out, and it's just like it's not the perfect picture. It's not all perfectly posed. The coloring is all off. It's a
Yeah.
Polaroid picture. It's all,
Right.
and but it's I firmly believe that that you're, like you said, you're onto something with regard to um that element of, and the thing I was thinking about it, but right, real quick before we go, when we were in the Navy, this was before computers, or not before computers, but before the fact that everybody had a computer. Let's
Before
put
they
it
were
that
used
way.
at the level they're used today, for sure.
Yeah, like if you had one, you were using it to do word processing or things like that. The internet was kind of, you put a disc in and it made weird sounds, and you could get on the internet, and it was really slow, but it wasn't what it is today. And when
Right.
we were out at sea, the only way to communicate with people we loved or friends or whatever was via mail, like actually write out a
Write a
letter and put
letter.
it in the mail and send it to somebody.
Yep.
And I remember, like, or like, without phones, like, before leaving for deployment, or coming home, or people we would meet in port or things like that. I remember at night, like sometimes when we had a moment, just like laying down on a tow bar on the flight deck during a break or whatever, and just really cherishing like those memories, or like rereading or rethinking in my mind what the words in that letter or whatever. And I'm like, when is the last time I've like touched into that? It's like now everything is immediate. Everything is right at our fingertips. And it's like, when is the last time I've just sat there and just thought about like the girl I was dating, the last night before I went on deployment, like some of the things we said to each other, and just reliving that in my mind. Because I'm not going to have an opportunity to talk to her for another 90 days or longer or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I love technology. It's what I built my career on, similar to you. But man, I don't want to sound like the old guy that's reminiscent about the good old days, but I think we've lost something
We
along the
have.
way. Lost
We have.
something important. Not just that's the way it used to be, and daggone it, why don't we still have it that way? I'm like, I feel bad, genuinely bad, that my kids will never have like some of those experiences that I think are very genuine and very important and things like that. I just I feel a little bit sad for them that they don't have that.
Yes, I do as well. I think it's what shaped us. It's what helped us to, be independent thinkers. It's, there's just some things that we've taken away in the spirit of, either cruelty, or it's not fun to feel bad, or it's not fun to experience that. And technology has eradicated some of that. I've been on the internet since the little disc, and every time you say that, I hear the AOL "you've got mail" thing go through my head. Like
Yeah.
it's burned in my head. But yes, I think it's taken away. The smartphone has made us dumber, and it's taken some of that away. And I think we're seeing some people realize that. We're seeing some revolted. I've talked about it on here about taking walks with my dog and leaving my phone at home so that I'm not, taking away any time with her, or kind of at that level. And I know that seems minute, but I think I'm also listening to a book called Tiny Habits. And if you can break things down into the smallest bite-sized chunks, it makes it doable. And so I'm
Dude, one
trying to
of the
do
things
that.
I enjoy most in my life right now, which happens to be in a couple hours, I will be doing it. is I don't know how familiar you are with the sport of lacrosse, but I help run the stats for my son's lacrosse team. He's a senior in high school.
Yep.
And in lacrosse, the stats team sits at a table in between the two benches on the sidelines, and you run the penalty box and you do all those things. I love that, dude, because guess what? For an hour, I've got no time to even glance at my phone. I've got no, like, I am like locked in to like what we need to be inputting into the computer, what's happening on the field, what's going, how many more seconds is this person in the penalty box? And it's like, I love it, dude. I don't have time to think about anything. I don't have time to look at my phone. I don't have time. Like,
You're present.
Yeah.
You're present. You're there. You're in the I was gonna say, because I know you're a perfectionist, and if you got a call wrong or you didn't input the thing in the computer right, you would feel terrible. So you want to be accurate. So you're probably just locked in.
Yeah, no, you're locked in. And more than that, sometimes, these stats are going to be what colleges look at when they start looking at kids. So it's more than just a kindergarten passing, soccer game or whatever. It's like it's taken on a higher level of importance. But it's not that. It's just that it's like, I mean, for an hour, it's like you're right. You're like completely locked in. You're completely present. You get to, I enjoy interacting with the kids, when they're in the penalty box and things like that. Like, and you're completely like locked in and present in that moment. Yeah. And I love to just wisecracks, like if guys in the box for, unnecessary roughness or something like that. I'll be like, in my opinion, that was absolutely necessary roughness.
That's great. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when he graduates and he goes off and you don't have that? How are you gonna keep that kind of stuff, or can you still go do that?
I mean, I can still volunteer to do that. They certainly wouldn't tell me I couldn't, do it. But I don't know. Those are the things, though, that I mean, I feel like when we're I think that we need to find more ways, whatever that is, whatever that thing is. Doesn't have to be doing stats for lacrosse, but I feel like we need to find more ways to get back to those moments when you're completely locked in and you're completely, in the moment. I don't even know if this was like a real photo or whatever, but remember a couple of years ago, a photo circulated around about, I think it was back when the Queen was still alive, and there was a parade and there was a bunch of people, throngs of people, like leaning against the ropes for the passing of the Queen's like entourage, whatever. And everybody had their phone up, and there was one old lady right on the ropes, just sitting there like watching, no phone, anything like that. And I'm like, what a great picture. Like, she was experiencing the moment. Like, she wasn't worried about getting the perfect picture so she could post it on her Instagram, or that she was just living. She was living that moment. And man, I feel like, to wrap up a lot of what we talked about, I feel like when you're truly living a moment, I could even, put tentacles back to, that's when friendships are made. That's when a lot of things like, you can't make good solid friendships with, one eye on your friend and one eye on your phone. Doesn't work that way.
They can feel it. You can feel it. Your attention is not there. It's not going to happen. Yeah, you need to be phone free. I was going to say one thing I was going to add. We talked about this when we were talking about marketing, I think, and it was the handwritten letter. We've been sending cards to like my parents and to family. And when we do that, we've been printing out at Walgreens photos, even though we can text them or email them, printing out the photos. And they're received, and I get these messages like, so thankful, it's like, that was a 49-cent printed off, piece of paper, and it makes them so excited.
That's awesome. And guess what? If you send it to them via text, they look at it, they enjoy it, they respond, and then that's it. I bet you there's some people with those things like magnetized to their refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm growing old and dust on someone's refrigerator because I printed it off for 49 cents at Walgreens. So remember that.
But
Still do things in the physical world.
yeah, no, I think that that's super important. I think anytime you can sort of, you know, because I think what we're really talking about, whether you're talking about friendships, whether you're talking about, romantic relationships or, dating or marriage or whatever, is it's like, you know, what forges those relationships? What are the things that like steel being forged into something? Like what are the things that actually, and sometimes I would likely say almost all the time there when you show up. I mean, and you're together and you do like I can't even remember, and I'm not even going to try to remember, but I saw a reel the other day, which I thought was poignant. A guy had him and his wife had a miscarriage or something of those, pretty serious thing. Like they experienced a miscarriage, like, months into the pregnancy. So it was a fairly traumatic thing. And the guy was telling the story about, a lot of people said, hey, praying for you, shooting texts over this, that, the other thing. His doorbell rings. He goes to the door. He opens it up, and his friend shows up. He's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing? It's the middle of the workday, And his friend's like, "When you get news like that, you show up. You don't text. You don't call. If it's possible, and think about what that did for that friendship. Think about those two human beings and how that dynamic permanently shifted in that relationship because that guy said, I'm taking off work and I'm going and I'm ringing the doorbell and I'm showing up at that person's house. I don't know where the story goes, but my guess is that relationship is permanently different.
I agree. I've been the guy that rings the doorbell a couple of times. I think we need to hug people. I think we need to touch skin. It's a lost art. So I'm glad we had this conversation. Thank you for doing the second of what I hope is a continued series on friendships. And thanks for being my friend.
Yeah, I think we should dig in. I thank you for being my friend. And I think we should dig into, I don't know if we're going to come up with any answers, but the absence of a legitimate third space in the United States is a problem. My daughter and I talked about it, and we're like, I told her she's getting into city and urban planning and things like that. I'm like, that's a worthwhile cause to figure out like what could the third space be? Because I think we're missing something because we don't have it.
I think so too. And I always wanted to make that be focused around some sort of a Wi-Fi or internet spot. And I'm slowly wanting that to go away because I'm wanting the space to be device free. I'm wanting it to be a place
Yep.
where you can just have conversations and clink glasses and look at even magazines. I'd rather you have a magazine and point at an article,
Here's the crazy thing. Those people, like I said, filled in the pub, 3, 4 deep outside the pub. You come out of the hotel, guess what? You hear like a roar of just like people talking and laughing and this and that. And it's like, it just reminded me, and I'm not saying to get together to have a beer every night is maybe the most healthy way to express
10 years sober.
the third space. But my point was, it was like you were like, to use some of the terminology we've just used lately, you could genuinely tell these are a bunch of people that are in the moment. They're looking each other in the eyes. They're sharing jokes. They're laughing about something that happened at work. Maybe they're sharing some disappointment that happened at work, but these people are together and they're in the moment with each other. And to me, I feel like, that's something we can explore more, but it's like, I love the idea of, we've probably all seen it 100 times now online where somebody's like, our Wi-Fi is out. talk to each other. You know, like those signs, like in a, you know, coffee, like our Wi-Fi's down. Talk to each other. You know, like
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, I think you know, there anything that's funny typically has an element of truth to it, and that's certainly one of
For
them.
sure. For sure. I appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks. You too, man. Take care. Talk to you
All right, love
soon.
you.
Bye.
Take care.